I work with a guy whose entire body is covered in tattoos. He used to be a cop, and then he became a special educator, which is how I know him. It's a long story. He has his family members' names tattooed with pictures of garden vegetables, an outline of the state of Texas from when he was younger on his calf, the entirety of The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost on his back in this very fancy-looking font, a massive and beautifully detailed old-fashioned chip on his bicep, a trio of origami cranes, which he compulsively folds out of whatever's on hand to help him relieve stress, in these tessellating patterns on his shoulder, this wildly detailed elephant he got in Thailand from a tattoo artist who did his work with bamboo needles, and many, many more. When I asked him why he had so many, he told me the first one was a fluke and a gateway. The second one was me being rebellious, and then I just figured, fuck it, what's one more? He started when he was young, and he's still going. He got the elephant just last year. His new plan is to get drunk with people he cares about and have them tattoo a constellation of stars in their own hand on his body. He knows it'll look bad, but it'll be theirs, and they're important to him. And even the stupid ones he got really early on, and even the stupid ones he plans to get, he treasures them because they're like a map of his life. I once saw a young person beginning that same journey with tattoos in my classroom. I taught this boy, we'll call him B, who was very introverted and shy. B was smart, but he didn't like school and he had a tough life. We played Super Smash Bros. Together when I brought my GameCube in after school a few days. And the first tattoo he got was his grandmother's name in this elegant Gothic font on his arm. Then he got Never Loved tattooed on his fingers, like Never, one on each finger. And then he got this roaring lion's head tattooed at the top of his chest, peeking up just under his collar. I watched him do all this and kept asking him the story behind it all. He didn't offer much of an answer, usually just a shrug and some brief explanation. My grandma's the only one who's there for me. There is no love in my life. Lions are strong. The tattoos, I came to realize, were like armor he wore to protect himself from a world that had been hostile to him since before he was even born. His grandma's name was a shield, I imagined. The finger lettering was gauntlets. The lion's head was the family crest he'd never inherit from parents he didn't and couldn't know. It's the one he chose for himself. I've always wanted a tattoo, but I've always been too indecisive to make up my mind. Every design that seemed great in my head one day suddenly sounded incredibly stupid a month or two later. I could never come up with anything that felt important enough that I needed to wear it forever. And my spouse is not exactly a big fan of tattoos, so I figured, why push it? How are you going to feel, she'd ask me, when you're 80 years old and you still have whatever you got tattooed on your body? And then I had kids and it suddenly felt obvious. Another former student of mine who's an absolutely brilliant artist and this kind of surrogate daughter designed a tattoo for me. It's two fox kits curled up together. My name, my real name, has its origin in the word for fox in another language, laying together in a bed of hydrangea, my spouse's favorite flower, with a Hemingway line I've always loved wrapped around it. Worth the fighting for. This, I thought, this is something I'd be perfectly happy to look down and see as an 80-year-old. My buddy, the one with all the tattoos, his favorite artist is going to do the job once, all the stores are open again and everything. Tattoos have been part of Gemstone for as long as I can remember. One of my earliest merchanting memories was getting some of the stock tattoos done on a character and thinking at, 13 or whatever, that I was probably the coolest person in the world. In the modern game that we play today, there are tattoos that can cast spells, tattoos that can heal you, tattoos that wander all over your body and have personality, and soon, some tattoos that do something very new and very different. Today, we'll be talking tattoos with GM Oscuro, who's a member of the development team and who's been working on taking tattoos into an exciting new direction in the very, very near future. So with that, welcome to the 20th episode of Town Square Central. I'm very excited to welcome GM Oscuro to the show today. Oscuro, welcome to Town Square Central, and we will try to keep it light today despite your name.
Thanks, Milex. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's a Spanish joke, everybody. So, what part of the world do you live in?
So I'm from the Midwest, and right now I'm living just outside Chicago.
So still in the Midwest, right? Or is Chicago not the Midwest?
I'm a Michigander from Oregon, right? But I ended up by the big city.
That feels like an upgrade to me. I know Michiganders are very proud people, so I don't mean to insult them, but Chicago's a fun city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any pets or any kids?
I have two cats that are female, and I have two humans that are male, and so my kids are 3 and 7, and so they're great.
Yeah,
I love them.
That 4-year age gap. So you were all done with diapers and all that, and then boom, right back in it.
Right back into it. Yeah. My brother and I have 4 years apart too, and I felt that was a pretty good age gap. So yeah. That's what we ended up doing here too.
Yeah. We were aiming for something like that, and it didn't quite work out that way.
Right.
So, other than Gemstone, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Oh, I'm a birder, which is like an extreme bird watcher, right? So I like to travel a lot, and I like to go to places specifically to see birds, and so I've gone to deserts and mountains and swamps and things just to see various, bird species and things. So it's a lot of fun.
All of the Magic the Gathering mana-producing lands you have
Oh,
visited.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You've been to a forest?
Of course.
Okay. Wait, so what's the difference between extreme bird watching and casual? Just that you'll travel for it, and most people will just go to a nearby park or whatever?
Right. Well, so what most people think about for bird watching is oh, you've got a bird feeder in the backyard, and you kind of, just look.
You look out occasionally, and you're like, oh, it's a blue jay.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But it's oh, well, I want to see a mountain bluebird, so I guess I'll go to the Rocky Mountains and try to find one in this forest. So. And
do you ever have trips where, I assume that all of your trips are successful. It would be a real bummer to go to the Rocky Mountains and then not find one.
So there's a term in birding called dipping, which is when you go on a trip specifically for, some kind of target bird, and you dip, meaning you missed it.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I have dipped many times.
Oh, man. But you're on a trip anyway, right? So you're still enjoying yourself.
Oh, sure. And I'm not to the point where my life list is so long that I'm going on a trips for specifically one bird. So I'll usually pick up, some good life birds along the way. And it's always cool to see birds that I don't usually get to see in my neck of the woods. But yeah.
Wow. Yep. I've never talked to anyone that is a birder before.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's a huge birding community. It's I think it's the second most popular pastime or something in the US, something like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You thought the Gemstone crowd got heated? You should see the birding community.
Wow. Is there a bird? There has to be a convention. Is there a bird con?
There are tons of, we call them birding festivals. And so the American Birding Association, who's the lead birding thing in North America.
Yeah.
They have a big birding festival every summer, and then there are tons of other local sponsored birding festivals and stuff.
Wow.
So yeah. I was going to do the one that's just like 20 minutes from my house this year. I've done it every year for the last like 10 years or so. And but it was canceled this year because, our global situation.
Yeah, no, that's made a lot of people's plans kind of go in the crapper.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to your implementing birding into Gemstone soon.
I like to try to get specific, like certain birds in, some like kind of sneak them in somehow or something like that. So one of my pet peeves is people refer to gulls like usually as like seagulls. And so if I could, I would just love to just strip the sea from all of the gulls, because like they're supposed to be just called gulls, right? That's the group name. And so
yeah. So if you ever want to get under a GM skin, just run around yelling seagull all the time in game. You're just gonna get struck down.
A specific GM. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, if you don't know who's watching, safe bet. What is a TV show or movie or game or something that you think everyone in the world should experience at least once?
So my favorite TV show is Avatar: The Last Airbender,
which just came on Netflix. I know
it did. Yeah, May 15th. It just came back to Netflix. So it's a great show. I've watched it through, I don't know, maybe 5 times or something, and I've seen it through with my 7-year-old now twice, and he just has so many questions, and it makes my day every time. We just like sit and talk about like points about characters and things like that. And, yeah.
Oh, I've never watched Avatar. I tried watching an episode the other night, and I kind of like fell asleep on it. But you're saying I should stick with it.
I mean, it's a series that's like it's not like episodic. Like you're not going to pick up like a single episode like you would like Seinfeld or something. But it's really well done. I guess like a movie. So I mean, Avatar, a lot of people have heard about, but for a movie, I really am into this movie called The Man from Earth. So let me make sure that's the. Yeah, the man from Earth. So this was a play that was written, and then it got turned into a movie, and it's like a B movie, but I just love the premise of it. It's like the premise is that like there's a bunch of intellectuals just sitting around discussing a thought experiment, like what would what would a person be like if they just never died, if they just lived from the beginning of civilization throughout the whole time. And it was really cool. I like to think about things like that, right? Thought experiments.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. The bar for me with TV is always, is it worth me watching this over rewatching The Office again? And
right. Sure.
I've done that a lot, so I feel like maybe I'll give Avatar. And I've never even heard of that movie, so I'll check that out too.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like a B movie, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about Gemstone. When did you first start playing Gemstone?
Probably back in 1996.
Yeah.
I think I remember sitting in my freshman biology class and doodling like what my first alteration like idea would be, So yes, that puts it in 96.
Yeah. And in that time, have you been playing constantly? Have you taken a lot of breaks? Like, what's your sort of journey with the game looked like?
Oh, it's been on and off, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure every Gemstone player has taken kind of like some kind of breaks and things, but I took a big one when my first son was born 7 years ago, right? But other than that, I've been, I haven't taken more breaks than like, a couple years at a time.
Yeah, it's my first son being born actually brought me back to the game because I was
sure.
I had time off work, and I was like, what am I going to do when everyone else is sleeping? And here we are.
Yeah, so I was under the impression that like I should just devote all of my time to my kid, right?
Yeah,
And so I like tendered my my resignation from being a GM, and then like a month and a half into it, I'm like, I got to get it out of this house.
Like, I made a terrible mistake.
Right?
Yeah.
So I picked up Magic the Gathering again, which I had like let fall by the wayside for many years, and so I got really into Magic for the last 7 years, and so I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then I eventually was like, well, I guess I could get back into Gemstone, and I talk a lot with like my some of my friends I made have kept me in the community at least, if not playing the game, right?
So since you started playing Gemstone back in '96 or so, up till now, how have you seen the game change? Like, how would you characterize the overarching arching changes in the game?
Well, I think that we went through a few real fundamental shifts in design, and I think the biggest one, right, it was the Gemstone 3 to Gemstone 4 shift. Yeah. And I think with Gemstone 4, like the game was just a lot more forgiving about changes that your character might want to make to it, right? Instead of really treating Gemstone like a, I don't want to say like hardcore or whatever, but like a true role playing character that is like immutable in terms
you're locked in.
Right, yeah. Like that's when we had skill migration and all that kind of stuff change, and that was a pretty dramatic effect on the game. And then I think more recently with things like Dusk Ruin and stuff like that, just the power level and customization capable for mechanical things has really taken off. Like we've had for a pretty long time a really good track record on customization for like fluff type, just character description type stuff, right? But I think with Dusk Ruin and all these crazy combat scripts and things that you can add to weapons and armor and stuff, like it's really taken off since then. So those are probably like the two major big sea changes, right, in Gemstone history.
And you're obviously been playing this game for a long time now. What do you think is the best part of Gemstone?
That's really hard to put your finger on, like what but because there are a lot of things I think that are really great about it. But for me personally, the thing that is best, which I think is different than what is probably necessarily the best thing, like for me, it's the community and the friends that I made, and that my ability to come back to that over time. I think in general, the thing about Gemstone, because that's not something that's like unique to Gemstone, right? Like lots of communities and subcultures have their cliques or groups and things that like to hang out and stuff. But what I think is unique to Gemstone that makes it really fantastic is it's singular in how you're able to like define and describe your character and let other people see that customization and description. I don't think any other game is capable of that level of detail, that Gemstone provides. And I think that that's really cool.
Now, if you could Thanos snap any single change into the game, not having to worry about red tape or getting permissions or whatever, what would you do?
You ready for it?
I'm ready. I'm always ready for this answer.
Savants.
Oh, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this is the missing 11th profession that we've been talking about since 2003, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to see that show up in the game.
Yeah, me too. I mean, since I came back, first son being born 4 years ago, I've wanted that to happen. And it's just a meme in Gemstone at this point, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for the last 2 decades nearly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so when I became a GM, it was like 2005 and Paladins had just come out. And I was just so excited about the ability to have like a new profession enter the game. I thought it was so cool. And I was like, oh, there's plans for like Monk and Savant to come out. Like those must still be like in design or something at the stage. I wonder if I could contribute to that, right? And so that's why one of the reasons why I put in my application. And so yeah, so like that was a major part in me coming to the game. So yeah, I'd love to bring Savants in.
Yeah, I would love for you to bring Savants in too.
Maybe one day.
I'm sure it's happening real soon now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So you mentioned the story of you becoming a GM. How'd that happen? I mean, you talked about like wanting to be a paladin. But talk a bit about your desire to become one and what that process was like for you.
I've always really been interested in game design in general. and Gemstone was, like Gemstone 4 had just been out for like a year and a half or something at the point that I was thinking about applying. And then I went to SimuCon 2005 and I met a new GM, a new dev GM at the time, GM Astilled.
Oh yeah,
And
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, we hit it off. We just talked a lot about mechanics and stuff, and we had a really good time at SimuCon, and so we became really good friends. And he was like, you should apply to be a GM, and so I applied, and the next year I came on board, and so it was that was pretty much the journey there.
Yeah. So for any would-be GMs, the process is go to SimuCon and drink with Astilled, and then a year later, boom.
I mean, like offer up some solid ideas.
Yeah, while inebriated.
God, yeah. There's some fun pictures of us.
Oh God, yeah. I believe that.
Sure.
So what's it like for you being a GM? You've obviously done it for a while, but what do you enjoy about it? What's it like to do it? Like, talk about that work.
So I was a GM from like 2006 to 2013, and then I took like a 7-year break, and I just came back recently. But it's cool, I guess, right? Like it's you get to impact the game, right? Yeah. Like I really enjoyed playing Gemstone back when I was really like predominantly a player, but I think it's even more fun to try to add things to the game that other people can use to play with, right? Yeah. And I also I really like structure and design and making sure that like formulas are are intuitive and all that kind of stuff, and which Gemstone does not do a great job at. But I think that like that part of stuff is just really fun to me, and so yeah, that's what I like about it, I guess.
Well, and you've been, I mean, I know that you have been incredibly busy lately with a lot of the stuff that you've been putting out, which we'll get into in a moment. So how do you get involved with this stuff that you're working on? Like, are you just sort of saying, I mean, you mentioned this a bit, but you're just saying like, you know what, I don't really like that, or I think this could be done a little bit different, and then you just work on it?
Right. Well, I mean, it's not like unilateral decisions, right? So yeah. I'll have like a pet peeve of mine that I picked up or that I heard some other player mention, and I'll add it to a list. And then at some point when it seems appropriate, I'll bring it up to the team, and the team will say, oh yeah, that is kind of silly. Why don't we just change that? Or, oh, that would be a good addition. Why don't we include this? Or if like my idea isn't like the best approach, then they'll suggest other like alternatives. Then, like so many of my ideas were just like, here's a problem area. And then the team turns it into something like so much better. So yeah, I mean, it's collaborative, right? And, yeah. But you just, you can bring up whatever you think is useful to change. And then once you get the go ahead, you can do it.
I will say the little thing that you did recently that I really like is the changes to wealth, where now you can like surreptitiously see how much money you have on you. Because I would always feel like a jerk. Like a little example of this would be like in Town Square Central waiting to get healed, right? Like, anyone healing right now? And then I would be like, oh crap, do I even have any money? And I would type well, but then I feel like it always looks super passive aggressive, where it's like, is anyone healing? I have money. Come on, people.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Pour the silver into your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, but yeah, I mean, that was, people used the info verb for that for so long, and I thought it was silly to have to like give them an entire readout of stats and stuff too, to just try to hide from other people, what that you're trying to figure out how many silvers you have.
I really wish that I'd known that, because that would have saved me some probably like weirdly passive aggressive wealth checks in my time. But you know what? I wasn't the only one, so it's okay. And so you mentioned working collaboratively with dev folks. How involved are you with other GMs?
Well, so outside of development, I've worked with, it's been a while, but I've worked with a lot of the CE GMs for coming up with like messaging or painting areas and stuff like that. Like one of my favorite additions to the game that I added were the two Rivers Rest hunting grounds, like the Marsh Keep and the Citadel. And so GM Scribes from back in the day like worked really hard with me on that. GM Tandui and she's like done a lot of deity specific messaging for a lot of cleric spells that I worked on in the past. Generally, like, I do work with people for like specific projects and things.
And I'm curious about the room painting thing. When that's happening, is that sort of like hey, we're making a jungle area, like give me, here's the shape of it, like fill it in, or are the directions more explicit than that? Like, how does that process work?
Well, usually we'll like identify something that needs to go into the game, and then depending on where it is in the world, there might be a specific guru for that town or whatever, and then they would be the ones responsible for figuring out like layout and stuff like that. And like dev would be like, if we're talking about hunting grounds, that's what would happen, and they would usually be the ones to come up with like storylines and stuff like that associated with it too. And then usually dev would be the ones who figure out like, okay, what would be appropriate level creatures here, and what would the creatures be that go into that location, and then they're usually code the abilities and all that kind of stuff.
Now, I know that one of the more recent projects that you've done is some changes to lockpicks and updating the way that those work, and some actually pretty significant changes to that process that I think have rogues pretty happy. So can you tell us about that project and sort of why you think we needed it and how it's going to benefit players?
Sure. So, I mean, the project that I didn't have any involvement in, but that came right before this was the locksmith pool, right? The box pool.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a huge dramatic change for what locksmiths players really needed to see in the game. So like mine is kind of just like, piggybacking on that a little bit. And it's like the three things that I changed were that if a rogue breaks their pick and they're a lock mastery master, then they can restore that pick, once a month to what its like factory conditions were, right? Like when it was manufacturer's conditions, like when it was first made. And so block picks degrade over time, and so this is a way to avoid that degradation, so you can keep like a favored pick around. So that was like a problem that people had, is they would have these favored picks, and
but they didn't want to use them, right?
Right, yeah, but they don't want to use them because it just keeps getting worse and worse over time. And then two other things were, in order to maximize experience gain with picking, you need to have like a whole kit full of different lock picks for the various materials and modifiers that you would use. And so just carrying all of that stuff around, when lockpicks weighed half a pound was, a lot of
lockpicks weighed half a pound.
They weighed half. I mean, so the gemstone encumbrance system is kind of quirky in that the only weights that are possible are a tenth of a pound, half a pound, or 2 pounds, and then any integer greater than that. So 2, 3, 4, right? So there's no like 1 pound, there's no like 2.6 pounds, like none of that stuff, right?
What?
So yeah, so that's the way that gemstone encumbrance works. So encumbrance of half a pound is like the default that we use for a ton of items, and so lockpicks just got tossed into that. But you need to carry so many lockpicks, and lockpicks probably don't weigh half a pound.
No, that's crazy.
Life, right? So
I've never bothered to weigh one, but I will routinely just carry around, like out hunting and you get a bunch of them. I'll just carry like 30 of them before I get bored. I'm like, well, I should just sell all these. I didn't know I was carrying around like 400 pounds of weight while I was doing
right.
that.
Yeah, so now 30 lockpicks is 3 pounds.
Wow.
So that was the change, right? Half a pound to a tenth of a pound.
Okay.
And then the third change was the key rings that lock mastery masters can make now hold lockpicks and keys entirely weightlessly. So if you put, I think their maximum capacity is 50 lockpicks. If you put 50 lockpicks on there, it doesn't weigh 5 pounds. It's just weightless.
Wow. I feel like a fool for carrying all those ridiculously heavy lockpicks around for so long.
Oh, but you can get like 100 silver for selling a steel lockpick.
Oh,
right?
believe me, I'm getting every silver for those copper lockpicks.
Right.
I just
yeah.
didn't know that they weighed as much as actual pounds of copper.
Right.
But, live and learn. And now I guess it doesn't even matter. So, past me will maybe get the message. Well, yeah, those are some exciting updates for rogues. But the thing that I know people are really excited about is a project that you're working on for a profession that has long been dogged since they were released, really,
Right.
which is monks. And I always thought that monks were really fun. I have a monk, and he's in his 20s or whatever, but I just really like the feel they have in combat. I think unarmed combat is just really, really fun. It's like much more immersive and engaging than like traditional combat. But a lot of people have complained over the years that monks don't have any utility, right? Like they can't generate money like wizards or sorcerers can really easily just by hunting, and they don't do anything. And the project that you're going to be talking about today directly addresses that critique. So tell us about this thing that you're working on.
Sure. So monks are going to be the only player profession that is able to tattoo themselves or another player. And so there are two kinds of tattoos that they can provide. So, well, first of all, they make mundane tattoos, right? These are plain tattoos that you get them off of the Flash tattoo list, right? So if you go to the Gemstone wiki, or not, what's it, the wiki, you can see the list under the if you search for tattoo, you'll see like over 800 different pre-made tattoos that you can choose from.
Like the smiling goblin tattoo.
Right.
Yeah. So the monks know all of those?
Yeah, they'll be able to create any of those.
Okay.
And it costs them like one dose of ink, which is like 50,000 silver. So to use the ink for that. So I mean, in the future, maybe merchants will offer those tattoos for cheaper, but for monks to be able to do it, it costs like 50K.
So a monk can just do any old. So a monk is now just like a traveling tattoo artist.
Yeah, if they're level 20 or higher.
Huh.
And then there's a skill check involved, but to make the mundane tattoos, it's pretty easy check to do that. But then the mechanically useful thing is for monks to change an existing tattoo into a mystic tattoo. And so mystic tattoos are enhansive tattoos, and so you can, like, a character can only have one mystic tattoo at a time, and that tattoo will increase a single stat by its bonus goes up by 1 for each circle that the tattoo is. So if it's a mystic tattoo of the first circle, it's a +1 bonus to a stat, or if it's like the 5th circle, it will be +5. And so
there's a maximum of 5 circles, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So then I could get a mystic tattoo of the 5th circle for strength and get +5 to my strength bonus.
Correct.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And so, these mystic tattoos, do they look different from the mundane ones?
They are there's no difference when you just look at another character to see. It's just whatever that tattoo looks like. So if you have a favored tattoo on your character, you don't have to all of a sudden have your snowman tattoo glow a deep red just because it
I really want a red glowing snowman tattoo.
Right,
go ahead. Yeah.
So I didn't want to change the look of anyone's tattoos forcibly, right? Because character customization is the thing that makes Gemstone great. So I wanted to leave that up to them, but you can easily tell from as a player which of your own tattoos is the mystic tattoo.
Okay. And I know that at Rumor Woods they've talked about making tattoos more interactive for roleplay purposes. So if you had a flower with thorns tattoo, rose with thorns tattoo, you could trace a specific part of it. Will those work with this?
So unfortunately, the way that mystic tattoos are built, it precludes them from working with any other special kind of tattoo.
Okay.
So
you can't have a wandering mystic tattoo.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like there's wandering tattoos, there's glamour tattoos, and then GM Tandoa's new tattoos that are the interactive ones that you can get at Rumor Woods. Those are also super fancy and won't work with the Mystic tattoo.
Okay.
But there's no reason why you can't, have both,
Yeah,
right?
just get your whole body tatted up, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you only need one of your tattoos to be a Mystic tattoo. So
yeah, and
right.
and where so this concept, I think this concept is cool, and it feels to me very like on flavor for me. Like this feels like a thing that fits with monks. Talk about where did this idea come from?
So I told you that I'm really interested in Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Aang's Airbender like master tattoos, right, where he's got the blue arrows and on him, are just they're super iconic, and I feel like the benders in Avatar are all like basically monks, right? So that I felt like was a big inspiration. But I mean, honestly, when I first got like where the idea came from was when I first got rehired, I decided to look through a bunch of old documents that we had from when we were designing like monks and things from back in the day, and I found what like all these old like so monks were originally supposed to be semis instead of squares.
Yeah.
And so I found like the old monk spell list that had been started, which was very rudimentary at the time, but also like listed on there was it. So this is something that GM Warden included on the spreadsheet. It said guild skill for monks, enhansive tattoos ? And so
And you were like, yes.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go with that. Monks need some kind of service outside of combat, right?
Yeah. And so then the monk guild is going to be coming anytime soon then, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So I am a big fan of completely abandoning the mechanical side of guilds in Gemstone. I really think that they were great for their time, but I think that their time has passed, right? Like modern gaming doesn't really have you trying to just do the exact like this. It's not so here's my argument for that, right? If you look at the two most recent guild skills that have come out into the game, Alchemy, which is a series of skills, and Lock Mastery, they're the most derided, right? Chided.
Yeah, people really don't like either of those.
Right? Like it's
like a completionist thing. Like you do it because it's like, well, what else am I gonna do?
And it's just, do we really need people to be like cleaning windows or whatever in order to gain their skills? I don't think that that's necessary. And so gating things behind that, I feel is unnecessary. While it's very immersive, and that's one of Gemstone's strengths is its immersion, I think that gameplay trumps that in this case.
Yeah, I mean I agree with that position. I think that I would just love guilds to be finished, even if and I'm even willing to slog through to gain like no mechanical benefit, but just so like
sure.
I've talked with people before about the Bard Guild, and it's like you do all these things, and then at the end you get like a custom Sonic altar, that whatever, like it's not going to dramatically impact anything mechanically. I just want something. I just want the guilds.
Well, the guilds exist, right? You can go to the
guild. Yeah,
but
it's like being in the. I don't know. It's like being in an Airbnb. You don't really like live there. It's not a real place.
But aren't the Sonic raffles like every month or every other month? Are held in the Bard guilds?
I don't know. The only Sonic raffle I won was at Ebon Gate, so I assume that all of them take place at Ebon Gate. Yeah, no, it was great. GM Valerka did the Sonic altar with me, and it was actually a really awesome experience. So shout out to Valerka for making that great for me.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. So okay, yeah. So Mystic tattoos. And people are gonna, of course, be really excited about this. And I've already seen people talking on Discord and on Elnet and in other places about how monks have gone from like the bottom of the barrel, like easy target for people to say like, well, this profession sucks, to people being really excited, even like trying to buy monks now, like on the PC, like.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think that adding a little utility to a class, it obviously, it's going to depend on how things get rolled out and how people receive it, but it's exciting, and it creates like sort of new life for this class that I think people who play monks are really happy with them, but may change the way they're perceived by others.
I think monks are great. Like I think the flavor is spot on, and I think the mechanics just needed a little time to mature, right? Like when we released stuff into the game, we generally try to be a little bit conservative at first, and then if things aren't working out, then we build up over time. And so so with monks, like when we first released them with their unarmed combat stuff, like it was like the system itself was a lot of fun. It was just a little slow, and so they ended up cutting the round time on that. And then they added in like M Strike, right, with the unarmed combat system, and they gave you a free jab with it.
Yeah,
and I think that went like a long way towards making monks like a lot more fun to play. And then with adding in the meditate verb for monks, like with the meditative resistance, that was a big deal. And I think that finally now we're getting to see monks with a cool out of combat service. And I think that this will kind of round monks out, so that way they're like on par with all the other professions, right?
Yeah. Well, they also have what I think has got to be like mechanically the best combat maneuver in the game with Perfect Self. Right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Perfect Self. Right.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's such an overpowered ability. I mean, it's great. And I actually think that it does fit somehow this idea. It feels very monkish, even though it doesn't even really do anything. It still feels like flavorful and accurate for a monk to me.
So I remember when we first talked about this combat maneuver, right? So like I was saying, like monks originally were planned to be semis, and that's what Warden wanted to do. And so I was really in the boat of trying to get another square into the game, because we only had 2, and there was however many, like there were 4 pures and then planned to be 5, and then we already had 3 semis, so why do we need a 4th one? So I was really pushing to get monks into the square role. And so he's like, okay, if show me like how we would do monks as squares, and like see if that would work out. And so I gave like a list of here are some potential combat maneuvers that I think could make monks like really unique or whatever. And the Perfect Self was on that list, and I think that we were like, well, that seems really cool. Do we really want to go this far?
Yeah, right.
But I think that it was a good one, because I think that it's like you want each profession to have something that like the other professions are like jealous of, that they like wish that they had, right? And so if people don't have, like if any given profession doesn't have too many of those, but everyone does have something, then I think that that's exactly where you want to be, right?
Yeah. No, I think that is right. And I think that's what balance... Like, you should always feel some slight pull to be like, but maybe I should make a blank, because they've got, Taunus or Perfect Self or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and these don't count as one of your enhansives, right? They don't count toward your enhansive limit.
They count towards the enhansive limit in terms of, like, you can only have plus 40 or like base or plus 20 bonus to a specific stat. So that they do count in that regard. They don't take up an enhansive like inventory slot, right? Because they're a tattoo, instead of like trying to wear only 3 neck items or something like that.
So right? unless you're one of the people that has like absolutely ridiculous enhansives where you're maxed out on everything, which I don't know if anyone is actually there. I mean, everyone's going to be excited about this.
I don't think there is a character in the game that has every single statistic to the, to plus 40. So.
Yeah. Well, I've always felt so intimidated by enhansives that I've never gotten. I don't think I have any enhansives on mine. I just think it's simpler that way, So, when you get these tattoos done, are they permanent? Like, does that bonus last forever? Like, how does that work?
So they're not. So the tattoo itself is permanent, and once you turn it into a mystic tattoo, its status as a mystic tattoo is permanent, but the enhansive of it still degrades just like normal enhansives degrade. But it starts with 100 charges, which is a lot of charges. So for a typical player, you would expect these to, like, the 100 charges to last like over a year.
Okay.
Every time you upgrade your tattoo, so it goes from like the first circle to the second circle, you would completely recharge the charges.
Okay.
So if you space out, getting those upgrades, you could easily make the charges last, many years. And then if it does run out of charges completely, you can also have a monk just recharge the tattoo. And so the same resource that monks use in order to make mystic tattoos in the first place is the resource that they'll use to charge them. And that resource is called motes of tranquility. And motes of tranquility are earned by absorbing experience from either an experience pulse that you get every minute or from offline experience. So you know how if you like fill up your head and then log out for the day and then log in the next day, it's empty. That experience also counts towards your motes of tranquility.
So the sort of resource needed to make this is pretty similar to the way that enchanting or ensorceling works.
Yes, yeah. Except for monks, they're not explicitly required to kill things. They can earn their experience through any means that you earn experience. And it's also nice that multipliers for experience work with it.
Ooh, that is nice.
So the gift of luminous that you get every week, that multiplier affects your motes of tranquility rate of gain. And then also, like, if you get a role-playing award, that would also affect that. Yeah. But instant absorption effects like the Rings of Luminous brooch or the boost absorbs, those don't apply to the motes of tranquility.
And how much experience would it take to sort of completely cap off your motes for the week?
It will be 50K for a week, and then the total max is 200K. So you can hold 4 capped weeks worth at a time.
Okay.
And so, and the number of weeks worth of resource in order to like upgrade the tattoo completely parallels ensorcels. So ensorcel uses a 1 week's worth of resource to get like a first circle or first tier.
1.5 for the second.
And then 2 and 2.5 and 3.
Okay. Wow. And I think that the advantage there is that even though this is new, there's not going to be a steep learning curve for people in figuring out how this works, right?
Yeah, so in game design we call that piggybacking.
Yeah.
Right? So we try to, not force people to relearn systems when we can avoid doing that.
Yeah, well that went really well with enchanting, right? Everyone was totally fine with unlearning what they knew and learning a new thing.
Sure.
I don't think anyone
Yeah, I mean, what was lost in having to relearn a system, I think, was a huge gain in terms of gameplay, right, for the new enchant system.
Oh, enchanting is a million times better now. Like, it just
right.
is. I mean, and people who complain, I mean, I will say, I don't have a wizard. I didn't do old style enchanting.
Oh,
but it seemed awful. And
it was awful.
Yeah, and like I never got any old enchanting done because I'd be like, well, if I give this guy my thing that is important to me and he just dies, know, right. I mean, it's sad that guy's dead, and then my thing is gone,
completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would only enchant for myself because of that scenario, right? I was like worried that like, well, what happens if I quit the game? Like, I will feel so terrible about like leaving with this person's item.
Well, you're a much better person than I was, because I was worried about getting screwed, not about how my actions would affect other people. I was worried about if they'd affect me.
Right.
I'm a very self-centered person, so there you go. Yeah, well, I'm very excited about these, and I'm very excited to see how they sort of affect monks when they come out, how they affect the monk status as sort of bottom of the barrel, which I think is going to change. I'm curious to know. There's been a lot of movement in the bottom of the barrel professions. Like, rogues have gotten a lot of love recently, right? Monks have gotten a lot of love recently. I don't know who's now left at the bottom.
Clerics, and clerics were the lowest numbers of the peers, and they still are the lowest numbers of the peers, but their play numbers kind of went up a little bit too. So each of these professions, right? I mean, that's like where you should really target stuff, right?
Yeah, you should nerf you should not nerf. You should nerf the bad ones.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you should
They do what they did.
Yeah. Clerics deserve what they have.
Right.
Yeah. Well, then I'm excited for paladins. Not paladins. I'm excited. I don't give a shit about paladins. I'm excited for the Savant update to be coming out soon.
Okay, yeah. Please don't read too much into that.
So you've been incredibly busy lately with both taking on some really big projects with this Mystic Tattoos thing, and then sort of medium-sized ones with the Lock Mastery work, and then these little baby ones with, like the Quiet Wealth. What's it? Wealth Quiet?
Wealth Quiet.
Yeah, Wealth Quiet. And then, something with Profile. Like, you've been doing a lot. So what else is on your plate in terms of projects moving forward? Because my understanding is that you sort of just shipped off Mystic Tattoos to QC, so that's pretty much done for you, right?
That's true. Yeah, I actually just shifted off to QC at about 2 a.m. this morning. Yep. So the next thing that I want to be working on, and it's still in design, so I can't talk about it too much, but it's going to be another profession ability, and for a specific profession. And it's not a service. This one will just be a straight up utility thing, and it should be pretty cool. I think it will shake up how this profession hunts. It won't make them stronger in terms of like killing things, but they'll have a really cool utility thing to use while hunting.
That is cryptic. Do you want to give us any clues as to which profession, or even like cat? Is it a square, a semi, a pure?
It's a profession that hasn't received much love lately.
Okay. All right, well, we'll let people read into that what they will. I do not know enough about the game to make an informed guess, so I'm not going to.
It's okay. I'm trying to give them like,
I think that's enough for people to read what they want out of that. And then is there anything else on your radar in terms of like stuff you'd like to be doing, or are you just going to keep on picking up things as you go?
I mean, I've got a long list of like pet peeves from when I was a player that I'm trying to go through. I kind of hit a lot of them, but you got plenty on your plate. I got plenty to do.
Yeah. So in the next year or so, in the next year, what goal would you like to accomplish as a GM? Like, if you look back in a year's time, when you're back on Town Square Central, which hopefully is actually before then, what are you going to look back and say like, wow, I'm really glad that I blank?
Well, I mean, Ascension, right? Like Ascension's got to get out.
Yeah.
So, like Ascension is a really big deal, and I'm not part of the original like phase 1 that's gonna go out for Ascension, but I've been assigned some work for like the next tier of stuff, and so I've got a lot of ideas and things brewing for that. So I think Ascension is going to take up a lot of my and the rest of the dev team's time.
Yeah, well, and I know that Ascension, there was a huge hubbub and a lot of excitement about it when it was announced. And I feel like people are now just kind of like waiting for things to come. And I imagine this is just going to come in waves as each of the 3, tiers is sort of rolled out and implemented.
Right.
So that will be really exciting.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Oscuro, thanks so much for coming on Town Square Central today. I'm excited to get my Mystic tattoo going, and I'm gonna try and do a nod to Avatar and get it in the shape of an arrow or something for you. You should have made that a requirement,
Right.
It has to be a blue arrow. Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me, Milo.
Yeah, thanks. Many thanks to Oscuro for coming on the show today. Also, a very special thank you to Ifrup, Luktar, Lysel, Chris, Warclade, Hellman, Darren, Heather Ann, Lex Bubba, The Town Crier, Dree, Leaf, Zorus, Altherin, Conrash, and Siamantha for being patrons of the show. If you like Town Square Central and you'd like to support it to keep it going, you should consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The link to support the show can be found in the episode notes for today's episode. That's all I have for this week. Get all of your monk whinging out now, because soon you'll be begging that mystical fisticuffer to charge the tattoo he put on your lower back, and monks have long memories. Or something like that, anyway. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time on Town Square Central.